Hello, Kerissa.
Hi, Heather. So, welcome to the Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast. This is going to be a quick intro as we are heading in to a really fantastic and fascinating discussion with Bowman Consulting.
That's right. That would be Rick and Doris Bowman. They have written the book, Your FBAs of Fantasy. And we are going to just talk to them about why traditional FBAs often fail neurodivergent learners, especially those learners with PDA profiles.
So, first off, Heather, what is an FBA?
That is a great question, Kerissa. So, an FBA is an acronym for Functional Behavioral Assessment. And I know that for many people in the neurodivergent community, myself included, I'm neurodivergent myself, as is my lovely co host here. The word behavior is a huge trigger for us. But behavior, we have to look at things sometimes, especially in education, from a behavior standpoint, especially when we have kiddos like our PDAers who have outward behaviors and even internal behaviors that may impede their ability to access school.
Right.
Yeah. So in this context, yes, behavior, yes, we're using the word behavior. And yes, um, we fully accept that behavior can be a bit of a trigger, but we have worked with the Bowmans for probably about the past 4 or 5 years now, and they truly understand. They get this part, and this book that they talk about, that they are promoting, that we're talking about, really and truly focuses in on the neurodivergent learner and how schools can recognize that that our kiddos' behaviors are not behaviors. If
That
that makes
they mean something
They mean something beyond the
and they're
behavior.
important.
So we're trying to, the Bowmans are truly trying to get past the behavior compliance. Let's look at the behavior. Let's see how we can fix it. Let's make out a sticker chart. Let's, shape and do whatever we want to with this behavior. But let's look, the Bowmans are saying, no, we need to look at behaviors through a neurodivergent lens so that we can understand, what is causing the behaviors and support the person's nervous system first,
Yes.
so that we can, or they can, or schools can provide accommodations, environments that truly support our neurodivergent learners.
Right. So when we're advocating for our kids, unfortunately, sometimes we just have to play by the rules that the schools have in place. And we have to be able to take their information, sort of rework it and give it back to them so that we can expand their understanding and perspective. And that's really what the Bowmans do. They go into schools and they do trainings where they take this official document and they try to rework it in a way that actually is supportive to that child, to their nervous system, and to their needs. And so the Bowmans are helping parents and teachers learn how to support children in a way that isn't solely focused on outward, undesirable behaviors, but really taking a look at the individual person. So, throughout the whole discussion, there's a huge focus on school and behaviors, but we are trying to educate and shift perspectives from behavior to a nervous system response. And
Correct.
it's a fascinating new perspective. The Bowmans are so passionate about really doing a major overhaul of the educational perspective as far as kids are concerned, and just really looking at why would somebody act that way that they are. And let's not punish the behavior. Let's look at what they need so that they don't have to even have that experience. So that's an overcap of this episode. It's really fascinating, and we really encourage everybody to check out. The Bowmans have 2 books. Their newest book is really that very practical how to apply these principles and these theories to everyday life. It's the how to behind the
Right.
deeper
Or
theory.
and their second book really focuses in on how does the general education teacher use supports that help support the nervous system practically in the classroom. And from somebody who has actually taken several trainings from the Bowmans, I can tell you that from a personal perspective, I was in a breakout room with a principal of a school that the Bowmans had actually been working with, and he said that his office referrals had gone down. I'm going to throw out the number 75%, but I think it was actually higher. I took the training a couple of years ago. But here's a principal saying that their approaches to how they rework how we're looking at behaviors has helped his school so much that office referrals were down that significantly. So, I think we should just get started with this episode of the podcast, and this was really great. And I hope that you guys get as much out of it as we did.
All right, enjoy
All
the
right.
podcast.
Bye-bye. Hello, and welcome to the Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast, where we seek community connection and co-regulation while chatting about all things PDA. Hello, and welcome to Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kerissa. And today we have some really exciting special guests. We're so glad to have you with us. So, Rick and Doris, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, who you are, and how you're connected with PDA?
You want to go ahead and
Well, I'll tell you
about yourself?
Sure, I'll talk about myself first. A little bit about my background. I started as a clinical psychologist in the beginning of my career, and then about halfway in my career, I switched over to public school administration. And one of the reasons that really drove me to do that was that I lived in a family that was very dysfunctional. As a child, I had a father who had post-traumatic stress disorder from World War II, and I had a mother that suffered from schizophrenia. And so my childhood was, I had a lot of trauma, and I really just wanted to give back to the education community that helped me really change my life. I had some teachers. I had other people that really supported me when I was a child and in the schools, and when I was living in the midst of trauma. And my heart, and I know Doris agrees with this, is that her heart as well, is to really help those children and families and teachers and administrators that are working with children and adults with trauma to be able to really help them heal from trauma. And we really believe that the neuroscience is catching up to what we didn't know back when I was a child or even a young man. And we're really seeing things now that where we can make a significant difference in the lives of children and adults by just, in many cases, doing some simple things
Mm-hmm.
when we focus on the nervous system and not just on behavior.
And I'm Doris. I started my career. I was going to be an elementary education teacher. I was going to teach second grade, had it all figured out. And then we moved to a town where Rick took a job, and I ended up emergency certified to teach a middle school special education classroom. So I had never had special education training per se. I had been a substitute teacher, but I did not substitute in the middle school either. So they threw me out of my comfort zone in a hurry. But that really changed the course of my career. So I spent 4 years in that position, and then we moved for another administrative role that Rick was recruited to. And I was actually asked on very short notice to take over the district's social, emotional, behavioral, mental health, like you name any reason for big behavior is why kids were with me. And actually, when they called me, I said, "Can I have 48 hours to think about this?" And they said yes. And I don't know, some of you may have had this moment like I did, but I hung up the phone and I didn't need 48 hours. I needed about 48 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. And I told Rick, I said, "I don't think I have to think about it. I'm supposed to do this." So I called them back and accepted. And they said, "Oh, and by the way, your classroom's, it's under construction. It's not done yet." It's this crazy start. And then they let me in on the really big secret, which was that the teacher who was doing this before you, he was just kind of playing his guitar and going to love him back to health. So do you think that maybe you could actually work on doing some academics, or, they kind of enter this program and then they never leave, and we'd love for them to start transitioning back out into general education. So I had two amazing educational assistants who had worked with these types of students, because I honestly had not worked with students who qualified under maybe emotional disturbance or whatever their IEP qualification was, but for emotional or behavioral reasons. Most of the students I had taught had learning disabilities and things like that. And I was really humble. I was willing to learn from them. And I'd made some visits some places. And long story short, I'm sharing this to say that really reset the course of my career, because I really dug into developing a program that became effective at helping kids build skills and move back out into general education. And so from that point on, that really was what I did for most of 20 years. And so then in the midst or I would say within a year of entering my last school district position in the district that we both worked in last in Oregon, I was asked to go to a training, and it was CPS training. And I went to that, and I left that kind of thinking like, this is good. This is different for sure than a lot of the other things, and after you've had 20 years working in those programs, you kind of feel like you've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
But I always go looking for the gems. And I thought, yeah, this will be good for some kids. So I don't know. There's some other kids I'm not sure. Excuse me. And then I got to see CPS presented again in concert with Dr. Bruce Perry, who was talking about the neuroscience
Mm-hmm.
and he was showing video of new neural pathways connecting in the brain. And I just, as I listened to him unpack this idea that we could repattern a nervous system, that we could build these new neural pathways, I couldn't run fast enough to where's the table that you can sign up to do this for life. And so that really hooked me. So I became certified, and that kind of led us into this path of where we both became certified trainers in the CPS approach, which is not Child Protective Services. If anyone's wondering, it is collaborative problem solving or collaborative and proactive solutions, whichever. There's two kind of different versions, but essentially based in the same, the same sauce. And then we started developing our own trainings. And so we are at our decade mark. We've been doing this for 10 years. As Rick shared with you all before we jumped on, a couple of years ago, we spent 181 nights in a hotel that year. So we do a lot of traveling to school districts all over the country, and we train. And I would say that what is interesting and really, I think, relates to, Journeys with PDA is that the focus has shifted more from being trauma informed to being neuroscience aligned is the bigger focus, right? It's a greater focus. So we're not looking at, has this child grown up in an environment, filled with adversity and toxic stress and things like that. It can just be a nervous system issue of how they're perceiving life, or how certain events in life have impacted them, whether that might impact others in the same way, because we all know that trauma is, it's how you have perceived and experienced an event. No one can judge whether it's trauma for you or not. And so I would say that our work has evolved over these 10 years. We have a lot of focus on adult self-regulation and wellness.
Mhm.
We train schools in that, and actually a method and an approach that is used by the Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, first responders, NFL football teams, Olympic athletes. And so that's been exciting to us to bring that as well, because we know that for many years we were teaching educators a lot, and parents that would come to our trainings about, how to work with a child or a student, but we weren't necessarily giving enough emphasis to what needs to happen for the adults so that they can build those skills as well and provide that co-regulation. And so we really have an emphasis there, I would say also. And then finally, one of our trainings, the first one that we developed ourselves 9 years ago, has now become a book. And then we had some cries for a second book. And so we have our second book coming out soon. But being able to put our book on, or our training on, what started as a training on trauma informed FBAs and behavior plans, into a guidebook and a complete program that people can do, I think for me that's fulfillment of a dream, because I think I couldn't have said it for you at the time, but at the time that we created it, what was compelling me to do that, even though I couldn't have shaped it and told you, was that I recognized that all of our kids in schools who chronically struggle with some sort of whatever, dysregulation, lack of skills, whatever it is that shows up as behavior, end up in this one funnel.
Yep.
And this one funnel is built on a lot of traditional, conventional approaches that activate the nervous system, that can often re-traumatize kids and for sure trigger kids, and don't always have the intended outcomes, often don't. And so I was recognizing that and realizing that that was probably one of the biggest pain points for students as well as for the adults in the school. And so I think so having this finally be a book where people can, not only attend a training that we do, but then they've got the book and they can walk it out and all the pieces are there and all the tools and the forms and all the stuff. And so I feel like we're hopefully starting a fire that's going to spread across our country. I have big visions for this, that we're going to turn this ship, and it's
Right.
going to be like soon. And we're not talking 20 years from now. We're going to turn this ship because we're going to help people to start looking at this through the lens of the nervous system and not the lens of behavior.
Yep. And there's there's gems in what you just said that I want to touch on so badly. Your trainings, that's how I was introduced to you two. And it was at the absolute it was at the most frantic time of like a 5-year period that I'd experienced, I saw like to take your training because we were getting Journeys with PDA was getting ready to host our very, very first conference retreat. And I took your training like a week before. And within about, I want to say 15 minutes of just being in it. And it was actually your FBA is a fantasy training.
Mm-hmm.
And within 15 minutes, I knew immediately that we needed this to help with our PDAers be successful in school. I mean, it was that fast. And I was so grateful that I'd made the decision to carve out the time to take this training. Because it aligns perfectly. Your philosophy and how you approach it and how you develop it and then teach it to teachers and administrators is perfect. I mean, it's just, I mean, I was a teacher for a very, very long time, and you sit through so many trainings that just all they do is check a box, and it's nothing you can take back to the classroom. But that is absolutely the opposite of your trainings. I cannot emphasize enough how much I got from them. And you talk about this wave spreading across, the United States on looking at behaviors differently. I firmly believe, I mean, with everything I have in my being, that it's saving lives. The approach that you are taking, and I may start crying. This is how much I really, truly feel this. There was a huge instance that happened in Florida, in Flagler County, where a young man, high schooler, his behavior plan was not followed, and it was tragic. And now he's sitting in jail for 5 years. And I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that this was going to be like that.
Yeah, I have those moments, believe me.
This is how much I feel about this. That had the teachers and administrators had the tools,
yes,
to help him, he would not be sitting in jail. So I've kind of made it my mission to keep our PDers. I want to keep them alive, and I want to keep them out of prison. Yeah. And I firmly believe that this approach, the path that you guys are forging, it will do that. It's about getting the information. But I am so thankful that you guys have done this, and now you've written a book, and now I'm going to stop. I want you to start talking about your book now so that I can kind of compose myself. So I'm sorry, Kerissa.
Why I would love for you to tell us first, what is the name of your book? And second, when is the book available, and where can people find your book? And let's start there, and then we're going to dig into some of the pieces about the book and what you guys are about.
Absolutely. So the first book, there are actually two. So this is Your FBA is a Fantasy. And we were just actually talking with someone earlier today about this. And then it says a guidebook to creating truly trauma-informed, neuro-affirming functional behavior assessments and behavior support plans. And, one of the reasons we felt that the book was so important, like we offer the training periodically, but not everyone can get to a training. Not every school district's going to give that staff person a day away from the classroom or has the budget or whatever it is. And so to have it in a guidebook, and then ultimately our goal, we've only ever done the training live, and our goal in the coming year is going to be to make it at least partially evergreen, available for people to be able to pay for and watch on their own schedule. And then there might be like an element still of coming together live, but we're doing all the maneuvers to try to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. But I'll just tell you that, so this book came out, I guess I will tell you about the title. Your FBA is a Fantasy. That came from a quote actually in that training that I described, when I was sitting in that training and I was seeing the neural pathways develop. And Dr. Perry said, you think you're going to do 20 sessions of CBT or therapy with a kid that has trauma and expect change. That's bleepity bleep bleep. That's a fantasy. Yeah, he uses some words when he presents. He's colorful. That's a fantasy. And I turned to Rick right in that moment. I was like, our FBAs and our behavior plans in school, that is exactly they are a fantasy. And so when we present this, often I will ask adults, because I say, okay, yes, we really mean it. I know it's inflammatory and it sounds funny and you laugh and then you don't know what to think about it. We actually mean it. The definition of a fantasy is the illusion that what you wish for is actually true.
Yep.
And the first time we actually presented this at a conference, it was to a room of 200 special ed administrators. And I said, and how many of you have a behavior plan in a kid's file back at your school and you wish it was actually working? 100% of hands went up. So it isn't even like, our school folks recognize that this is a point of pain. Like, the plans we're using largely aren't working for many kids. And so that was a big part of this, was like really dismantling this paradigm about behavior, and that we're going to control it, and that we're going to kind of revisit the circle of, antecedent behavior, consequence. We're going to live over here in the, rewards and consequences part of that. And so we came out with this one. I'm just going to give you the little nutshell here. As soon as this one came out, we started getting emails from people saying, every person in my school needs this. Every teacher needs to learn this. Not just, I can write great plans, but then my staff aren't going to know how to implement them. You need a general education book. Oh, and we had just kind of recovered, right, from getting this one across the finish line, which I think part of why it was such a big job is that it comes with a whole implementation kit, a whole resource portal full of every tool and form and everything you need to implement it. So we decided, yes, we already kind of knew what they were telling us to be true. And so we decided that, okay, we're going to take the initial content in this book. So chapters 1 through 11, that same teaching is present in this book, only it's repurposed and retooled to be written for a regular classroom teacher, a principal, a general education principal. It says Facing the Fantasy, Finding the Way Forward. Every educator's guide to achieving lasting behavioral change with today's students using neuroscience aligned trauma informed practices. The title, this one says that. The title actually changed a little bit. This is an author proof copy, but it says Every Educator's Guide to Moving Beyond Classroom Management to Achieve Lasting Behavioral Change Using Trauma-Informed Practices. So this book, the first 11 chapters, these people are going to learn the same things that the people writing the plans are learning. But then the final chapters really go into how do we assess our environments and our systems and our practices and design them to meet the needs of every nervous system.
Yep.
And that's the whole
And what
book.
I haven't seen your second book, obviously, because this hasn't been released yet. But your first book is extremely user friendly. It's not this. It's not. It's like a workbook. It truly lays it out. It's not like a college textbook. It needs to be in college.
Mm-hmm. We have professors looking at it using it for teacher prep.
Yes, and it is very, very, very user friendly.
Thanks.
Yep.
Set out to try to do that.
Yeah, we wanted to write it in a way that people wouldn't get lost in the neuroscience, but understand the neuroscience, and they would, in a way that would keep them reading.
Right.
Because,
relatable. Very relatable. That was our intent in doing that, and to make it very clear that also that everything, I think we have over 200 citations in that book.
Yep.
And so everything that is in the book is not just what Rick and Doris are talking about or what we've experienced, but it's all backed by current neuroscience. And we wanted that to be there so that people could say, you know, what I'm doing,
It's
I can be assured
evidence-based.
is evidence-based. And
Right.
if I stay with it, I will see the change, because what we're doing is we're changing the nervous system. And like you said earlier, Heather, when you were talking about losing children, you know, you just hit my heart too, is that we know that the adverse childhood what am I saying?
Experiences.
Experiences.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. The adverse childhood experiences study, the ACEs study, showed that kids with 6 or more ACEs had a had were more at risk for dying 20 years younger than a child that had 3 or less ACEs. Think about that.
You had it in the workshop, in the training, you had us take the ACEs, and I was shocked. Like I was shocked at my score on it. Shocked.
Well, and
You know,
what's
the other,
amazing, they only have 10 ACEs there as well. If you really, I mean, the form that we use as part of our functional behavior assessment has something somewhere around 40 adversities that you're measuring. And it's amazing. You know, that's just sort of a representative list in the ACE study.
but whatever a child is diagnosed as, you know, whether it's PDA or autism or ADHD or just trauma alone, what we wanted to convey is that this is all about the nervous system. The nervous system drives our thinking, our emotions. I mean, our emotions can help drive the nervous system, but overall, the nervous system drives everything that we do. And trauma and stress and all of the things that affect the nervous system put a load on the nervous system that wears down the nervous system. It wears out the brain, the organs of the nervous system, and it creates more behavior. It creates more, but it also creates more illness, more
Yep.
health,
Yeah.
and it creates. And if we want children to learn, and we want them to be able to overcome the circumstances of their life, and also just what is going on in their nervous system because of those circumstances, then we have to be the ones that help save them. And the cartoon that we used to show, you might have seen it, but it was a couple that were on the beach, and there was a little boy flat out in the ocean, and flailing around asking for help. And the lifeguard said something like this: "We're encouraging people to rescue themselves today." And that always stuck with me, because if we don't rescue these children, who will?
Right.
They don't have the ability. And that's one reason we wrote the book, because we wanted people. It's more than just, you know, this is more than just a scientific
Manual or something
on how to work
Yeah.
with trauma. It's about all of us. And the functional behavior assessment part really just gives you a lot of great templates so that you can make sure that you're not missing any area that might be overlooked in a typical functional behavior analysis and behavior plan.
Sure. I realize we've been talking for about 23 minutes about FBAs, and we really haven't explained what an FBA is. So to a lay person, how would you explain what an FBA is to a lay person, or a functional behavior?
Do you want me to explain that?
Yeah.
So a functional behavior assessment, typically, it depends where you are located. In some states, it appears to us from our experience that the approach is that a student doesn't necessarily get considered for a functional behavior assessment and then what typically is called a behavior intervention plan, we call a behavior support plan, until they are already on an IEP.
Right.
In other states, it's different. Like in Oregon, we did them prior to, and sometimes the student didn't even end up needing to then be on an IEP if we did a proper behavior plan. Um, but a functional behavior assessment essentially is supposed to look at the behavior, and the idea from the title of that is that we're looking at the function of the behavior. And conventional wisdom, conventional approaches have looked at that through the lens of, well, the function of the behavior for that child is they're trying to get something, they're trying to avoid something, they might be trying to communicate something, but typically it was getting and avoiding. And I like to say, like, that was a step in the right direction from he's a dirty, rotten scoundrel, he's trying to wreck my day, to he might be trying to get or avoid something, right? But it's like you just took the first layer off the outside of the onion. There was like 16 more to go, because I like to ask people to think about, so what about the other 27 kids in the class? Do any of those kids ever want to get something or avoid something? And I see a lot of head nods, and then I ask, well, so do they all throw chairs and cuss the teacher out and run out of the room, or what's the difference? And so when we talk about that, and then we talk about this idea of, when we're thinking it's all getting and avoiding, that's all about motivation, right? It's motivational. If they really wanted to, if they really tried harder, if they really, but I'm going to present a challenge to that. My challenge to that is, I want you to imagine that the recess bell rings at the elementary school and all the kids are supposed to line up to come in from recess with their class, and JJ runs off across the play yard, climbs the trees, crying, and will not come down. And if we're all in our conventional thinking, we're thinking, well, he just doesn't wanna. He wants to avoid doing math. He wants to get more time outside at recess. He just doesn't want to come in from recess, doesn't want recess to end. Well, on the surface, maybe there's some of that. But if we follow that line of logic, then we have to assume that all those other kids who are lined up over there by the fence are loving it when recess ends. They're dying to go in and do math. They were so happy when they had to quit in the middle of a soccer game to go line up and go in the building. And it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Do we think that some of those kids standing in that line right now didn't want to go in from recess? Absolutely. But they have some skills for tolerating frustration, for not being able to get the thing that they desire, for being able to manage, being able to verbally express that frustration or not. So there's some social skills involved. There's some emotional self-regulation skills involved. There's all these pieces involved that, I like to ask the adults, what about all of us? Do we ever want to get or avoid something during our day? Right? And did we find you laying in the middle of your living room, flailing around, banging your head, you hopefully maybe during COVID, but um, I guess teachers, did they find you under your desk, banging on it, yelling, I want to call my mom? Because, okay, so why not? Why not? Because you've developed a set of skills over your lifetime that enables you at the moment in the morning when you can't find your keys or you can't find the other shoe that you plan to wear or whatever, you just don't stop and drop and the whole day's over and you don't go to work, and because you've developed skills and the nervous system regulation to be able to navigate your way through those situations.
Can I
yeah, absolutely.
In our book, we even briefly talk about the fact that this is the science behind what we're talking about right now. Some children cannot once they are out playing, the sympathetic nervous system is activated.
Yeah.
And once it's activated, well, when they're asked to come in, then they have to be able to shift into a more parasympathetic state. But there's actual evidence to show that some of these children can't do that. They can't shift into a more regulated, sympathetic,
Mm-hmm.
parasympathetic state. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, there's not a break there that
Mm-hmm.
shifts that. And so therefore they want to stay outside. And oftentimes their behavior looks like they're just trying to avoid going to class, when in fact, it's all about what's
It's being
happening in their,
driven
it's
It's
into
being,
it.
from experience as being autistic ADHD, it's painful. It's literal. There is pain that happens in my body
Yeah.
when I have to stop doing something that I'm in a flow with
Yeah.
to turn and do something else. People who have never experienced that don't understand that part. Like it makes my skin crawl just to think about it. And so that's something that absolutely has to be taken into, and I'm a grown up, right? So how does this feel, and what is the experience like for somebody who's 5, somebody
Yeah.
who's, somebody who is a high schooler who's being asked to do, who's the adults are not following his behavior support plan.
The other thing too is like touching on this is a small child. How are they supposed to communicate that? And it really should
Mm-hmm.
fall on the adults
Yes.
to have this perspective change of, well, why won't he come in? Why is he so upset? And I think often, the adults just get frustrated and they're not taking that perspective. And I know when it comes to like our PDA kids, they're so often looked at as naughty or defiant or difficult, and so there's not that perspective of, okay, so this is what I see on the outside, this is what's happening, he won't come into the building. But there's not enough of the adult who stops and goes, I wonder why. I wonder why this is happening. And that's what's so incredible about like what you guys are talking about, because you're asking people to stop and to realize that this is a brain body wiring. This isn't about like a it's not a rotten attitude. It's their body and their brain, and that's just, and you have real data and information to back up why this is happening, and
Yeah.
then supplying the adults with the information and the how to, what
Yeah.
to do next.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
when
Well,
when I'm sorry.
well, I'll just to follow up on what you said. So what we've been looking at is the wrong thing, haven't we? We've been looking at the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and instead and asking well, why is this kid doing this? And then we're
Why
making
won't
an
they stop?
assumption
Yeah.
about why they won't stop. Instead of going, what you basically said is, why aren't we asking the question of what's happening in their nervous system right now?
Yes.
There must be a good reason for this, and
Yes.
there is, and the nervous system is in typically in a dysregulated state, and we as the adults, the only way that we can really do, though, what you were saying was that we have to work on our regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that Heather and I talk about so often when we talk to parents who have kids, PDA or not, but they're experiencing the difficult behaviors, one of the first things we say is, you're probably going to have to look at yourself. You like, how is your nervous system? Like, you need
Mm-hmm.
to check in on you, because if you can't recognize what's going on in you, or you don't have those skills to pass on or to teach, or if you can't keep calm,
Yeah.
then you can't even ask that question of, okay, what's the deeper issue here? And so to me, like, that's one of the most important things is like, okay, we're going to change our perspective of the kids, but we also want to show you as the adult, the leader, the caregiver, like, how are you going to deal with yourself and equip yourself so that you can support and understand the child? And I think that's incredible.
Well, I think that's been one of the challenges in schools, I think, is that, there started to be a recognition of that. And then it was kind of almost done initially in kind of a shaming way. It's kind of like, you're the adult, you need to be regulated. And we had some well-meaning friends, administrator friends, who were like, I told my staff, and we're like, well, actually, it doesn't work any different with the adults than it does with the kids. And I think there's this tendency to think like, well, you're whatever, 30 something, you've got this degree, you've got this title, you've got whatever. Somehow that comes with like a set of skills. And
Right.
It doesn't. We have to build the skills. So in both of our books, actually, we made the transition chapter between learning about the nervous system and all the stuff we need to know into the and here's how now you're going to apply it. That chapter right in between is it's called The Nervous System Doesn't Lie. Why adult regulation is non-negotiable. And
Yeah.
what we really try to convey there is, be gracious to yourself. You probably haven't been given the space, the tools, the support, the instruction, whatever's needed to build those skills. This doesn't just magically show up because you're a grown-up. And so, as we ask our educators to be the ones in a school environment that are, the source of co-regulation, we need to be really attentive about what are we doing for them to help them build the skills.
And also, so how do we build a system then that helps teachers build the skills, and the administrators, everybody within that system, to build the skills so that not only for ourselves, but that we provide consistent care for the children, rather than we see in a lot of the places that we go, we see some people that really jump aboard the train that we're talking about, and we have others that have difficulty doing that. And that's not because there's nothing wrong with them. It's just they have typically done things a certain way over and over and over, and that's what their nervous system is patterned to do and comfortable with. And so we need to really build those systems too, so that we can be consistent for the children, so that we can be predictable in everything that we do, because we know predictability is regulating and literally can repattern the stress response system. So there's a lot there, but it does really start with us adults.
Yes. What do you think schools get wrong with FBAs? I think I know I have an answer to that. But what would you say they get wrong about FBAs?
Well, I'll give you plenty of time here, but
we're going to say the same thing anyway.
We are going to say the same thing.
I am willing to bet.
I'll tell you, we have.
It's the B word.
It's the B word.
And I said, not the one that kid called you last week.
Yeah.
But,
it's behavior.
Behavior.
The focus, we've all been trained in education, and I would even argue in psychology as well, that it's about behavior. And so behavior, especially in schools, is the problem. But it is not the problem. Behavior is not the problem. It is a byproduct of what's happening in the nervous system. It is a byproduct of the child not having the neurocognitive skills to be able to meet certain expectations and demands of not only school, but of life in general. And if we don't address those things, if we don't address the nervous system first, we're never going to get to the behavior, because the nervous system is what drives the behavior.
Yeah, 100%. I would echo everything that you just said, is that, and by the way, think about this. When we focus on behavior, what do we notice? Behavior.
More behavior.
Right? More behavior. When our whole focus This is on. It's like when you buy a new car and you.
I was just gonna say that. That was just right. You buy that car, and
We've got this, burgundy Honda CRV out on the driveway, and when we first bought it, we're like, oh yeah, we haven't seen very many of these, and you drive off the lot, and you see one every block, and it's because all of a sudden you're looking for them, and so when we think about our whole, that's why I said like this whole funnel for me, like I have felt like if we can just reshape what this funnel looks like all kids in our schools who have chronic behavioral struggles end up in this funnel. What does this funnel look like? Right now, it looks like it's just plastered with behavior all over, right? The word behavior, because that's what we pay attention to. It's what we count. It's what we write goals about. It's what
that's what we can see.
It's what we can see.
That's what we can see.
Taught, yes, and the science said, the behavioral science said, you need to be able to count it and tally it and measure it and all the things. And, it's a little more abstract to measure skill growth, but we can do it. We can measure skill growth as evidenced by abilities to do things increasingly more and more in what we would call an adaptive way, or a way that meets adult expectations, a desired way, right, in a school. And so, yeah, absolutely.
I love what Doris is saying. We build the skills. The challenge there is that think about something that you're good at. How long did it take you to build that skill, right? That you're good at. And the thing about it is that skills are built through these small interactions, or what we call small doses of relational stress.
Yep.
And yet, so you don't always see a change in the behavior right away. And so what have we been trained to do? We've been trained to, okay, if I'm always going to use a consequence, a reward or a punishment, then I'm going to see some sort of increase or decrease in the behavior, right? And so it's immediate oftentimes. So you can get compliance. You can get compliance if you use punishment in a consistent way. You can get it for a moment, but it's going to come back and revisit you. Why? Because you haven't done anything to the nervous system except created more dysregulation, perhaps, in the nervous system. But it looks like you've done, but you see that immediate change, and you're going, oh yeah, we got this. He or she is doing better, and then you see the next time that that they have a certain expectation of them to do something, they can't do it.
Right.
Would you mind scooting around there and turning that blind a little bit, because it's starting to come right in. Thank you, honey.
Something that I see continuously and over and over again when I'm in an IEP meeting, and we're talking about a behavior plan, is that the behavior plan may be beautifully written. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And then that's all it is. And the onus is put on the child to meet the expectations of the behavior plan. And it's getting better. The schools are getting better. They're starting to pick up on the neuroscience and understanding what that means, and maybe looking at things a little bit differently. But then they spin the wheels. It's like they're hamster in a wheel, where they're like, well, we have this behavior plan and it's not working. It's just, and it's because it's compliance based, it's rewards and consequences, and it's the skills that they are wanting this child to have. They're not being specifically taught to the child. There's no skill teaching there. And I'm going to throw something radical out there, and it's going to land how it's going to land. I believe that if the accommodations were appropriate for that child, you wouldn't need a behavior plan. They'd be out, if they could understand that, and the accommodations were appropriate, we would never have to write one.
Well, I think you have to have the accommodations, and then I think Heather, what I envision that we might see this look like would be more like it's so funny. We're having this echoing conversation that literally we just had with someone else earlier today. We're all going like, is why are the plans, as you described, all about what the kid is going to do when we're talking about a kid who is lacking skills and lacking self-regulation? Really, it would be the accommodations and modifications in the plan essentially is going to look like a lot more about what are the adults going, in other words, think about it in terms of specially designed instruction. Like we wouldn't say this kid is going to be able to read at this level, they better figure it out.
Right.
Because this is their goal.
Right.
They better figure out how to read. But we're going to say, well, they're going to, do this many less times, or and that's why we really encourage people, as you know, we developed a social, emotional, behavioral goal bank that's all based on skills. All the goals are focused around, the child is, JJ will be able to remain focused on a task for 5 minutes or more in 60% of opportunities, and so him being able to focus on the task is our goal, not JJ will interrupt 50% less times and now somebody's sitting over tallying how many times he's interrupted. Not because it actually changes in a way what we're measuring, because we are still looking for being on task, but here's the principle at hand is that there's living systems principles, and one of those principles is what you focus on grows, and it's what we said about the car.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have behavior plans where all the goals are all about all the kids' bad behavior, what is everyone in the whole team going to be focused on?
Bad behavior.
But if we write
again, check, he did it again.
Skills, right. Then all of a sudden we're all focused on how's JJ doing with being able to focus for 5 minutes or more. And we're going to help. How are we going to support that? And how are we going to give instruction? Or how are we going to be nearby and help them co-regulate? Or like what's needed to help make that happen? As opposed to like, how do we get them to stop it? Right? Which is what we've done in schools. And by the way, I'll let you jump in here, but this is just like a side, it's a bunny trail that I could spend an hour on.
I get it.
Is when our initial response, when a kid starts to show nervous system activation for whatever reason, it could be a kid with trauma that has just activation going on in their body. It can be a kiddo on the spectrum or with ADHD or whatever, and their nervous system is jazzed up right now. It's just like it's kind of sparking off, and it's, what have we always done? We want them to stop it, right? That is the exact opposite thing that they need right now. What do they need at the moment that their nervous system is charged up and activated in a way that is difficult for them to manage? They need to discharge. And instead, we want them, our approaches have been about stop it, and then they need to suppress it. You need to sit down. You need to be quiet. You need to do it. Instead of, and what happens after you suppress something for a long time? I always jokingly say, like, my kids gave me an Instant Pot for Christmas, and it sat in my cupboard for like 2 years because it terrified me.
Yes,
Doris.
I thought the same thing, exact same thing.
And I had this wonderful thing that everybody's talking about how great they are, and I'm like,
I'm going to blow my house up.
Yeah,
I've seen this before.
About that kid the same way though. Every time we make them stop it and suppress instead of discharge, we're adding to that pressure that is internalized until it's making them sick. It's making them have mental health potentially issues and emotional health issues. I mean, a whole lot of fallout can come from just that one. What did you want to say?
Well, I think one of the things that you guys are making me think of too is, why are we waiting for the behavior to happen before we address it? Right?
That's one of like our biggest questions. Why does a child have to cause a huge ruckus and a big problem where they're refusing to go to school and they're explosive before we do anything to help them? Yeah. And we talk a lot about people say, well, they just freaked out of nowhere. And we're like, okay.
There was no antecedent. There was absolutely no antecedent.
They'll be like, nothing was going on before that. And we'll be like, well, Yeah, there was something happening. And what was their tone of voice? How were they moving? You know, where were their eyes looking? Like, what happened yesterday? What's coming up tomorrow? And like, so there is all of those things, but that also goes back into that nervous system and how it's wired and how it responds. And there are things that lead up before a child becomes, or even an adult, anybody, before they become explosive. And uh, yeah, I think, thinking about like my kids, and many PDA kids, they really, really want to go to school. They do like to learn. They
Yeah.
do like to have the social activity,
Yeah.
but nobody picks up on those little tiny distress signals ahead of time. And then what happens is they just absolutely cannot cope any longer. And then you're into where they can't even get into the car just to drive, much less get into the door of the building. And so many PDA kids aren't able to even get into the school. And if we were looking a little bit closer at those early signals.
Hmm. I like to use that analogy. I think this is a useful one, so I want to share it. I think it's useful for parents to think about it this way and to share with teachers. Is if you think about that nervous system like a thermostat,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's say normal setting for a thermostat is 70. Okay, all of us should be, if we're at a calm baseline, we're at 70, right? And something happened yesterday and the thermostat got ticked up a couple degrees. And then something happened during recess and it got ticked up another couple degrees. And then something, and we're like you said, and then we get to this point of this big event and we're like, we don't see an antecedent. But if we looked at that thermostat, it's set now at 85, right? And so they're just like, they're ready to have a nuclear meltdown because they're not meant to run at 85. They're meant to run at 70. Their body, their nervous system, their brain, like nothing functions at 85. And so one of the kind of strategies, and we teach using a thermostat because we talk about like, so every time you engage in this positive dosing that Rick was talking about, where you're having these positive relational interactions that follow certain patterns with empathy, with curiosity, and so forth, you end up giving these doses that gradually repattern that nervous system back more toward a stable baseline that is within a more of a what we call a normal range, right? There is no normal, but you know what I mean. um
Yeah, and what we were and think about doing it in a proactive way, right?
yeah.
If we knew that a child was struggling to just even stay in school for the day, then wouldn't we do something the first thing in the morning to help them with regulation, work with them, not us going, well, this is what you need to do, but what would help you
Yeah.
today?
Why don't you
And
talk about that within the context of, so one of the core elements in our trauma informed FBA and behavior plan, the FBA is, or in the behavior plan itself, is a proactive regulation plan, which has three parts to it. And, as schools, we've been really great at the re regulate part, right? If they start to lose it, then we can go take a walk. That's re regulate. But we need to get much better at the other. Why don't you share it in the
yeah,
context of that?
yeah. So what we talk about is having a proactive regulation plan. So a plan where they can come in the morning, and maybe it's just for 10 minutes, and they can do something that is regulating. In other words, they can work on, if they need to do, they can gain more it may be gaining more understanding of what of their nervous system, of when they start to become dysregulated. And we all need this, right? So be able to identify, like, I start breathing, having shallow breathing. I have a tummy ache. My shoulders start hurting, whatever it is, right? And help them understand what is happening in their nervous system, in their body, and then what would help you. What are things that would help you? And we have a lot of simple strategies and techniques to be able to help with regulation. And then how do we help you stay regulated? What do you need to be able to stay regulated? Well, if you can identify when I'm beginning, if the child can identify when they're becoming dysregulated, then we have a plan for them to go to somewhere where they can work on their regulation with a regulated adult.
Can I talk about the stay regulated part too for a bit?
Yeah.
And so
part of to talk about.
Yeah, you do. Part of the stay regulated. So I actually think so. Schools have mostly defaulted to the re-regulate. Some of the schools that I've been in and that we've trained in and so forth, will do like a check-in in the morning for a kid. So there is sometimes a get regulated portion. But this stay regulated part, I actually think is where we miss out on the jackpot. Because the stay regulated is, how am I going to proactively give you opportunities to engage in regulating activities throughout the day? And it serves a twofold purpose. The one purpose is immediate. That purpose is in that moment, on that day, today, Tuesday, whatever day it is, right? I'm helping them to have these little pieces of doing something regulating that helps them, that thermometer or that thermostat down. But the other part is much more longer term. And that is, I want you to think about this for a minute. Everybody who's listening to this podcast, Rick and myself included, we've all got something we're good at, right? A musical instrument, a sport, cooking, whatever it is that you're good at and you love to do. How many of you only practice doing it when you were really, really upset and now you're amazing at it?
So true.
No, right? No one. Yeah.
I have your stress continuum chart
Yes.
in my head right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so if you think about, like, okay, when do we typically take kids to, let's go do regulating activities, when they're starting to already go off the rails. And now the brain's no longer available for that development of new neural pathways. And so what we encourage schools, in every school we set foot in that we do a training, we encourage them to develop a proactive, you can call it a regulation room, a reset room, a wellness room, however you want to call it, but it is not the meltdown room. It is not the room where any kid goes when they're upset. This is a place that they go. They're scheduled. Maybe they go for 10 minutes in the mid-morning and 10 minutes mid-afternoon. So they have their morning check-in, and then mid-morning they go down. This is one elementary school I'll use it as an example. They walk up. There's 3 chairs sitting outside the door of the room. If it's not quite their time to walk in yet, they sit down on the chair, but they take their shoes off and they leave their shoes there under a chair. They walk inside the room. They lay their card down on where they're at on zones of regulation. This particular school used zones of regulation. They get to choose a sand timer. Okay, choice and control is the principle of trauma-informed practice, is also very neuro-affirming, right? Is I have a choice. Do we care if they take a 5-minute, 7-minute, or 10-minute break if it helps them stay regulated? We don't, right? So they pick a timer, they engage, and they pick a regulating activity. It might be sitting in a teepee with some headphones on, doing some coloring. It might be sitting in a little plastic egg chair, all these different options. They do their thing. They take the timer back when it runs out to the person that's running the room. They check in, make sure how they're doing on the zones again before they send them back to class. They step outside the door, put their shoes back on, go back to class. I love asking educators, how many of you have a kid that leaves for a break and never comes back to class? 100% of hands go up, right? 150%. I always like to ask, so do you want to know why they don't come back to class? And everybody stares at me just like you ladies are staring at me right now. And I'm like, I can tell you why they go to break and they don't come back to class. because we never trained them to do it when they were regulated. We're always trying to get them to go back to class after an issue has happened. Now they have a ritual. I leave class, I go down. Why do you think we have them take their shoes off?
Because
we have absolutely no reason. Although
Yeah.
for some of them, sensory wise, it probably would help.
Yeah.
Yes, but literally there is no reason at all that they need to take off their shoes except it is a ritual.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're training their body. Like at a certain point, their brain doesn't even have to think about it anymore. It's as automatic as anything else that they do. And so they have this, oh, I leave class, I go do something regulating, I return to class. And if we can program that as a ritual at times when they're calm, then we have what we refer to as automaticity, right? It's just like, how many of you learned to drive a car by watching a YouTube video about it? Yeah, I see no hands going up. Yes.
It reminds me of a scene in The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Where one of the characters is trying to learn how to drive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, think about, so, because this trips us up with kids, by the way, doesn't it? So how many of you learned to drive a car by watching a YouTube video? Absolutely no one. Because if I let you watch the YouTube video and then took you out and put you in the car and said, okay, go for it, we'd have trouble. But could you tell me about how to drive a car? Well, Doris, okay, yep, you get in, you put the key in, then you put your foot, you could tell me about it. And that's where we get kids, it's like, oh, didn't you know what the consequence of that was going to be? Yeah, I knew I was going to get kicked out of class. Don't you remember the last time you did it? Yeah, outside of that window of when things are escalated, right? But so you think about this idea that you can't, if a kid is going to have that ability to like, oh, I go access something that helps me stay regulated, if we're only practicing it at a time when they're dysregulated, it's never going to stick.
Right.
We need to be able to have those practices, just like we practice driving a car when we're calm. And then we're able to do it when things are a little bit more stressful.
And Heather, you mentioned the stress continuum there.
Yeah.
Everything is state dependent. Everything that we do is dependent on our physiological and emotional state.
I have probably pulled that scale out 150 times since I was introduced to it. Because great, and I will put a link to that scale in the notes to this episode. We could absolutely talk to you for like the next 5.5 hours. But at some point we're going to have to go, some point we're going to have to do other things here. So I want to do something that we've never done on the podcast. So you guys this is going to be brand new. And it might be a little fun, and it might not. This may be the first and last time we ever tried this here. Okay? So I'm wondering if you'd be interested. Can we do a rapid fire, real fast question and then answer, and where you either tell us, keep it, tweak it, or toss it?
That's great.
So we're going to keep, tweak, toss.
Like that? Yeah.
All right.
Wait, okay. Keep, tweak, or toss.
We could do this. Keep, tweak, toss.
To the people who are watching, it's a thumbs up, a thumbs neutral, and a thumbs down. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
ABC data.
What was a
antecedent behavior consequence data? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're is that neutral?
Yeah, that was like I might on a first time with the kid when I'm kind of just figuring out what's going on. I might be looking at some of that. So I've got like a little 10% in there somewhere.
So let's do our since we're working out. This is the first time we're working out. So we could do the hand signal and say the word, since we are also just audio. Sure. Okay, so ABC data would be somewhat toss, in between tweak and toss.
I would add one thing with that in terms of a tweak. If you also focus on what was the antecedent.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
return to that.
Yep.
Return to the antecedent. Mm-hmm. What happened before the behavior.
Reward charts.
Boo. Oh,
Toss. Boo.
100%, 100%
toss.
toss.
we call it, we call it a threat of a reward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because
there's threat of a consequence, and then there's threatening a reward because you've still activated the nervous system.
right. Compliance goals.
Ugh.
Compliance goals.
Yeah.
Down. Toss.
100% toss.
Yes.
Sensory accommodations.
Oh yeah.
Thumbs up. Keep.
100%.
Co-regulation supports.
Keep.
Always.
Thumbs
keep.
up. Collaborative problem solving.
Keep.
Keep.
Up.
Yay.
And the last one, student autonomy.
Keep.
Keep. Build
Yay.
that. Build that.
Yeah.
All right, what do we think? Do we think we should keep, tweak, or toss our rapid fire question section of our podcast? What do we think?
I like it.
I think it's good.
like
I
it.
think it's good. Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up, is there anything that you would like to add? You know, like I said, I could talk to you for the next 5.5 hours. Is there anything that you would just like to throw out there?
I think that I will throw this out because we've talked a lot about the FBA book, the behavior assessment, the behavior plan. We can have folks writing really amazing plans and doing amazing assessments, and if the people out in the environment can't implement them, we're toast. So we need for all of our educators to have nervous system literacy is what we refer to it as, right? We need to really start walking around and looking at each other as like, okay, you're a nervous system and some skin, like all of us, we all have nervous systems. Our nervous systems are engaging with one another. We are affecting one another with our state. There's all these dynamics going on that are beneath the surface. And I think that it's really, well, I'm going to say this. This is a nugget I want to leave people with because I think this is one of the most misused things, and with all the best of intentions, is using praise as an example.
Yep.
So we're taught as educators, right? 4 praises for every 1, correction or anything like that. And there is I wish I had the page marked in here where I could read to you what this article says, but there is an article, it's on a PBIS website, and I'm not saying everything about PBIS is bad. There are some things about it that are good, like teaching expectations, but it talks about, students need positive rewards because this will increase their motivation and blah, blah, blah. And I broke it all down in the book into like this term, this term, this term. Okay, when you say this, you're making this assumption. You're making the assumption, for example, that a praise feels positive. When actually a praise, for many of the students we have in mind, the reason we praise them, oh my gosh, you did such a great job, and they're like, yuck, get away from me, is because, let's be honest, praise is judgment.
Yeah.
Praise is me judging that you did an acceptable job of something. And if I already feel like I fail on a chronic basis, I don't want your judgment. It doesn't feel good to me. It's not reinforcing. It's not motivating. And so we really, really encourage people to use neutral language. You want to notice. You want to, gosh, I noticed you got one of your math problems done today. How'd you do that? Gosh, it seems like you got started reading quicker than usual today. What is it about that book that you really got you so interested? And I'm not putting my judgment out there about it, because for many of our students, it can feel too vulnerable. It can feel like I'm putting myself in a position to be shamed or humiliated. What about when you find out I'm not so amazing? You're going to reject me. Like there's a whole package of stuff.
And if you look at praise through a PDA's nervous system, praise is actually a demand, and it sets the expectation that it needs to happen again. And what if they can't? What if they can't accomplish that?
Yeah.
So,
and it's kind of a form of control too, right? And for kids with trauma, if they have been victimized, if they have been abused, neglected, they're like, first of all, what do you want? Or what do you want from me? Or what are you going to do? There's like this, what's the underlying motive to why you're saying this? So it can really affect a lot of kids and a lot of, so we just need to be tuned into our kids, be attuned. And if you notice a kid kind of is just like, not so crazy about the praise, don't heap it on more. Maybe pivot to a neutral approach.
Right.
And what do you want to say?
Well, I'll be really quick, but I'm just thinking about how hard it is for all of us to make changes. And the reason for that is that we typically, research shows that we typically have the same thoughts every day. We wake up on the same side of the bed. We brush our teeth the same. We are creatures of habit. And so for all of you that are going to see this podcast, we want to let you know that we have empathy for you.
Mhm.
Change is hard. And if you're feeling like you're failing as a parent or as a teacher or as an administrator, that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the fact that oftentimes we're talking about making some changes in what you do to really have an effect on the child's nervous system and on your nervous system. And we think your nervous system is just as important as the child. And the child needs your nervous system, but be kind to yourself, be compassionate toward yourself. And then I also encourage you to look at that child, and no matter what behavior you see, and no matter how hard it is to be with them right now or to work with them, that to have what I believe Gabor Mate put it this way, something similar to this, is that the compassion of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
A belief that they can change. A belief they can change no matter how bad the behavior looks. Because remember, the behavior is not the problem. It's the nervous system that we have to work on and improve.
Can I share one thing, Heather, about the new book?
Well,
I
yeah.
want folks to know, and this will be posted by, and I realize this will still be up and posted well beyond the launch of the book. But for folks who do watch the podcast soon, the book releases on the 6th. We're doing some, and you can also go to our social media and find the information will be up there as well. But we want to make sure you have everything here. We're doing some amazing promotionals for individuals and for schools, because this book is going to have a resource portal that has a basic school-wide book study. It has an in-depth school-wide book study. So if there's a team that wants to go deeper, it has something like 53 and counting tools that go with it for regular classroom teachers. This doesn't have to be like somebody in the behavior lane. This is like for the regular classroom teacher. One is a language shift tool, for example. Instead of saying you need to calm down, you could say, gosh, this seems like it feels really big right now.
Right.
What's going on, right? So giving concrete tools to folks that weren't trained in all these areas. And this really is a big growth curve for them. They're administrator tools. So, but we're going to have some really big, like the promotional for group disc they're going to pay less than 50% for the book. Plus there's other perks, like we'll do a 2-hour Zoom PD for your school. I mean, there's things to go along with it to hopefully help some folks get connected and start to see this spread.
Right. And we'll have all those things signposted, links, all of that information, your social media information, all those things in our podcast
Description.
stuff.
Yeah.
Post everything.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for having us today. This is really
I want to just circle back to the beginning of when I said this is going to save lives, and I believe that with every fiber of my being. The information here is going to save lives. So I thank you.
Yes.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
you guys so much.
Guys,
And thank you for having us and for the work that you are doing.
Yes.
And I think that educators need those of us who have an understanding of PDA and anything related to the spectrum and that moves in the direction of behavior. Educators really need us right now to help inform, and that there's just a lack of knowledge, and they were not given this in their programs. And so anyone who's out there doing this work, I just think that you are filling a gap that is desperately needed because they are spending 8 hours a day with maybe 27 kids. And when you don't know what to make of what you're seeing, you're left to draw conclusions based on maybe some out of date material that you were trained with.
We'd love to have you back.
We'd
I
love
hope we
to.
can. I hope we can have you back very, very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for those of you who are listening, if you would like to learn more about pathological demand avoidance or the PDA profile of autism, you can find a lot of information on our website, journeyswithpda.com. We are on Facebook, and you can find us on Instagram.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, take care.
Thank you.